Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Ravens are tied at the top of the AFC North standings with just 5 games left to go in the 2025 NFL regular season, and they play each other twice in those 5 matchups. Today, the first of those matchups here in Week 14, and today on Steelers Talk, I've got our first Ravens Week preview of the season. We'll talk about the stakes of this ball game, the Baltimore Ravens schematic, coaching, and roster breakdown. We'll also get into my keys to victory for the Pittsburgh Steelers to come away with a huge divisional victory this weekend. And, of course, my score prediction comes at the end of today's show, so make sure you guys stick around. But welcome into the preview, guys. Make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already to help us win off the field before, hopefully, the Pittsburgh Steelers win on the field against the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday afternoon. By clicking that subscribe button and helping us win our sub battle, I have a little bit of a bet going on with our Ravens host this week, Trader Joey, where we agreed where the losing host has to buy the other host a steak dinner. So I don't want to pay for Joey's dinner, man. I want him to pay for my steak. If you guys want to help us out here today, make sure you click that subscribe button. And guys, new viewers, we are counting on you guys to get it done for me here, all right? I really don't want to have to pay Trader Joey a victory steak here. And of course, the real ones that are already subscribed can't help us out here. So if you're new to the channel, you watch our show, you want to help us beat the Ravens this week, make sure you guys click that subscribe button to show them who runs the AFC North. All right, so let's get into this matchup, man. And this has been the one that we've been waiting for all season long. Steelers-Ravens, I think the best rivalry in the entire National Football League. Both teams sitting at 6-6 at this point in the NFL schedule. Obviously, you know, the Steelers had an opportunity to put the division away because the Ravens started this season 5-1. Then they are 1-5, I should say. Then they ripped off 5 wins in a row, and then they just lost in pretty embarrassing fashion on on Thanksgiving last Thursday against the Cincinnati Bengals. And then the Steelers obviously are not any better. They've lost 5 of their last 7 games, and they desperately need to turn things around if they want to win this division. But with both these teams sitting at 6-6 at this point in the year, and they play each other in 2 of the final 5 games, obviously these matchups at the end of the season are going to hold a lot of weight in determining who wins the AFC North this year. And the stakes in this game is who takes control and who gets that 1-game advantage in the division with 4 games left to go, which will be a huge advantage for the team that ends up coming away victorious in this game. And make no mistake, guys, Pittsburgh's road to the playoffs this year at 6-6 in a very competitive AFC conference at the very top this year is essentially to go through the division championship, all right? Like the chances of the Steelers getting a wild card spot this year, which is how the Steelers have gotten into the playoffs the last several times, is pretty darn low. According to the New York Times playoff simulator, there's a less than 1% chance of the Pittsburgh Steelers being a wild card team in the AFC this year, and that's because, you know, they've already lost to a couple teams that are in the wild card race, like the Chargers and the Buffalo Bills, who currently hold 2 of the 3 wild card spots in the AFC. Plus, those teams, all those teams are sitting at 8-4, and then you got a team in Houston that's sitting at 7-5 right now. So, if the Pittsburgh Steelers want to make the playoffs this year, it's going to have to come through the division. The good news is you still have 5 games here to make your case to get that home playoff game. And then if you make the playoffs, you do get that home playoff game, which should increase the chances of the Steelers potentially getting a win in the playoffs, something they haven't done in several seasons at this point. And when it comes to this game, according to the New York Times playoff simulator, if the Steelers win this game, they've got about a 2/3 chance of winning the division. But if they lose, they got about an 18% chance of winning the division. So obviously getting that 1-game advantage with 4 games to go is going to really loom large in terms of the chances of the Pittsburgh Steelers being able to win the division and make the playoffs this year. So this game, I cannot stress enough how important this ball game is. Now let's take a look at the matchup itself, starting with the Baltimore Ravens coaching and scheme breakdown. We know these guys extremely well. John Harbaugh, the second longest tenured head coach in the National Football League, only second to Mike Tomlin. Obviously, these guys know each other well. They've been playing with each other, and they've been playing against each other since before, 2010. So it's been a very long time at this point. And, Todd Monken runs the offense here. He's a very, very good offensive coordinator, runs a modern pro spread offense, does a good job putting his guys in positions to succeed. And then Zach Orr runs the defense here, runs a McDonald big nickel defense with Kyle Hamilton at the nickel spot, one of the better big nickels in the league. But you guys can take a look at their roster here, starting with the offense. Obviously, Lamar Jackson is the starting quarterback here, elite level, tier one superstar level guy, but he's struggled against the Pittsburgh Steelers throughout his career. We'll talk about him later in the show, but Ronnie Stanley is their left tackle. Andrew Voorhees is their left guard. Tyler Linderbaum, one of the best centers in the league, is their guy in the middle. Then they got Daniel Falele at right guard, massive human being, and then Roger Rosengarten at right tackle. At the skill position players, they got Zay Flowers as their number one receiver, DeAndre Hopkins as their number two. They like to use multiple tight end sets. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are the two guys that you're going to see the most of. And then, of course, Derrick Henry, King Henry himself, is their running back. But then on the defensive side of the ball, you're going to see a 4-2 front, Draymond Jones and Kyle Van Noy on the edges with Travis Jones and John Jenkins on the interior. Not the best defensive line in the world, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, but they got a really great off-ball linebacker, one of the greatest in the game today, Roquan Smith. And then Teddy Buchanan has actually played a pretty decent season this year alongside Roquan Smith. And in the secondary, man, they've got some real talent. Nate Wiggins is dealing with an injury. He might not be able to go this week, but he is their number one corner on the outside. Marlon Humphrey is their number two guy on the outside. Then you got Alohi Gilman, who they traded for earlier in the year, Malachi Starks as their true safeties. And then Kyle Hamilton is kind of their joker piece, that nickel piece that goes all over the formation. Obviously, he's a great run defender, great instincts, big body, phenomenal athlete. Like, he is one of the best overall defensive players in football. Got to know where 14 is on the field at all times. And if Nate Wiggins can't go this week, guys, it's not like there's a huge drop-off. Chidobe Awuzie is a longtime starter in this league. He played pretty decently, honestly, against the Cincinnati Bengals on Thanksgiving last Thursday night. So just keep that in mind. If Wiggins can't go, it will be Cheeto for the Baltimore Ravens. But still to come here on the Steelers Talk Preview here in Week 14. Keys to victory versus the Ravens. The 8 things the Steelers need to do to get this huge victory in Week 14. Then we've got my scouting report on Lamar Jackson, their starting quarterback, and then we'll get into my official score prediction at the end of today's show. So make sure you guys stick around. But before we get into the rest of this week's preview, let's have a word from our sponsor today at PrizePicks, and it is officially the holiday season. And in my opinion, guys, this is the best time of the year for watching sports, whether it's bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes in both collegiate and professional football. It's all happening at once. And while that action is going on, there's one place where it feels so good to be right, and that is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in. My favorite feature about PrizePicks is how you play is up to you. If you want a little flexibility, you can choose the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. But if you're feeling really strong about a particular lineup and want a bigger payout for getting it right, I go for the power play. No matter how you play, though, PrizePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test and make some money. That is, if you know ball. So for me and Ponzi this week here on PrizePicks, our lineup looks like this. We're taking the less on passing yards for Aaron Rodgers, the more on rushing yards for Derrick Henry, and the more on rushing yards for Jaylen Warren. You guys can download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. So the first key to victory for the Pittsburgh Steelers this week is to contain King Henry himself. And yes, I'm putting Henry above Lamar Jackson because Henry was really the reason, in my opinion, why the Baltimore Ravens were as successful offensively against the Steelers defense in their final 2 matchups last year. Now, in the first matchup of the season in Pittsburgh, back in Week 11 last year when the Steelers ended up winning 18-16, they did a great job holding down Derrick Henry, right? He only had 13 carries the entire game. They forced Lamar Jackson to throw the ball a ton. He only had 65 yards on the day. He did get a touchdown touchdown, but he also had a critical fumble early in the game that allowed the Steelers to get the ball rolling. And obviously, I think the Steelers are going to have a similar kind of performance in this ball game if they're going to hold down the Ravens offense. And, you guys can see in the final two matchups, I mean, Derrick Henry just ran all over this Steelers defense, averaged like 160 yards a game, or 170 yards per game, I should say. He averaged like 7.5 yards per carry, which is insane. He had 2 touchdowns in the wild card game, would break off long runs, and there was just no answer that the Steelers came up with to stop Derrick Henry in those final two matchups. And honestly, last week against the Buffalo Bills, watching James Cook run all over the Steelers defense and frankly just spamming the same play from the same formation all game long, and the Steelers not finding any solution to it, it reminded me a lot of those Ravens games at the end of the season last year. So, kind of getting that deja vu last week heading into this week's matchup is not a good feeling, at least on my part. But really, guys, it's simple for me. On defense, if you can stop Derrick Henry and you can force Lamar Jackson to throw the football in this game, I think you can stop the Ravens defense. I think that is the first step to stopping the Ravens, is that they're going to come out with a run-heavy approach with Derrick Henry. They're going to want to feed the beast here. They're going to hope that they're going to be able to just ride that wave the entire game like they did in the two final games in the 2024 season in this rivalry. So I think it's pretty simple, guys. The first step that the Steelers need to do on defense this week is to stop Derrick Henry. You got to stop him at all costs. And then if you can do that, then you got to execute the quote-unquote Lamar Jackson plan, as Mike Tomlin likes to put it. And essentially what the Lamar Jackson plan is, guys, is to play a lot of man-free coverage. Now, the Steelers love to play man-free. They've played it quite a bit this year and honestly haven't been too successful. They've been a little bit better at it ever since they got Kyle Duggar. But pretty much what it is it's cover one, but they don't have the intermediate zone defender. They only have the singular deep zone defender in the post. So it's pretty much man coverage across the board. And they've been playing this coverage against Lamar Jackson his entire career. The reason why they like it is that it's a 5-man pressure look. So theoretically, you plug up all the potential running lanes for the quarterback to exploit, and you can get to the quarterback theoretically faster with that extra rusher. And the Steelers trust their guys in man-to-man coverage across the board to hold up against the Ravens' weapons. And this has been a plan that has worked throughout Lamar Jackson's career in Baltimore when playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He still has a completion percentage of less than 60% in his career versus the black and gold. He averages just over 210 yards per game passing. He has more interceptions than touchdowns, and his passer rating is below a 75, which is a really low passer rating. So the Steelers traditionally have done a really good job on Lamar Jackson playing man-free coverage. The question is, does this iteration of the Steelers defense are they capable of generating that same level of success they've had in previous years? And I think the answer to that question is certainly possibly. You look at Lamar's numbers this year, he's ranking pretty low, and definitely lower than what we're used to seeing from Lamar. His accuracy has gone down pretty dramatically. He's 32nd in the league in on-target percentage right now. He's turning the football over more. He's 22nd in turnover-worthy play percentage. He's not having a lot of big-time throws down the field. He's 36th in the league right now. It's just a 2.1% big-time throw percentage. He's still around league average in some of the efficiency rankings there, like adjusted EPA per play and success rate. Yards per attempt is still pretty darn high, still top 5 in that regard. But he's taking a lot more sacks this year, guys. 34th in the league in pressure to sack percentage. So, he's somebody that traditionally likes to hold the ball for a little bit. And if the Steelers can get to him, you can tell that his hamstring is still bothering him a little bit, and you can get him on the ground. So that might be a great opportunity for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense this week. And I think another thing is that, I think the Steelers defense lives and dies by the turnover. And, they do get turnovers. Even the last 2 weeks, they've had 2 turnovers in each of the last 2 games. And then, you don't get one in the second half. I would say get a turnover in the second half. If you can do that and kind of turn the tide in this ball game, especially in a road game against this Baltimore Ravens team, I think that would be absolutely huge. And, I think at this point, turning the football over is the best thing that this Pittsburgh Steelers defense does, so you have to be able to bank on that if you're going to win this ball game, in my opinion. Then you shift over to the offensive side of the ball, and I think you got to get the run game going. Last week, the Steelers came out with a rather pass-heavy approach, and I just don't think that this is a passing offense. I think that this offense really needs to live and die by the run game, just like the defense needs to live and die by the turnover production, right? So get Jaylen Warren going, get Kenny Gainwell going. If you need to, get Caleb Johnson going a little bit, get him in the mix as well. We've seen this defensive front for Baltimore be a little squishy, a little soft at times. I'm hoping that the jumbo personnel packages for the Steelers can look more like they did against Chicago than they looked like last week against the Buffalo Bills. Now, another thing that I hope that the Steelers can do this week, and something they haven't been able to do for over a month now, and that's stretch the field, all right? Get some deep shots down the field to DK Metcalf, Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin III, maybe even MVS gets elevated this week. You got to find a solution here to get some completions down the field to get Baltimore's defense, out of playing super aggressively towards the flats and underneath, and to load up the box to stop the run game. You got to open things up here for those other elements for the Steelers offense to really thrive. And until they prove they can throw the ball down the field again, defenses are going to continue to play the Steelers the same way. So really think that you need to find some ways to stretch the field, get the ball vertically, get the ball down the field vertically to DK and all these different weapons in the Steelers offense. And then also when it comes to Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, come in with a game plan that plays to the Steelers' strengths. If you want to run in between the tackles, come out, in a spread formation. If you want to run outside the tackles, go jumbo and put Spencer Anderson and Darnell Washington on a wing on either side of the line. That's where the Steelers' run game is at its best. When they try to run in between the tackles from jumbo, they're not as successful as when they run outside the tackles. And then when they run the ball outside of the tackles, when they're in spread, they're not as good as when they're running the ball inside the tackles. So you just got to play to your strengths. Same thing goes for the passing game as well. If you don't play to those strengths, obviously I think it's going to be a long day for the Steelers offense in this one. Then, the defense needs to take the football away, but also the offense has to protect the football. We've seen some really bone-crushing turnovers over the last couple of weeks. He turned the football over multiple times in the second half against the Bills, and that was a big turning point in that football game. Of course, the strip sack fumble 6 on Aaron Rodgers, and then followed that up by a really bad interception from Mason Rudolph. You got to protect the football better, and you got to win the turnover battle if you want to win this game, in my opinion. And then the final key to victory is that these games tend to be close. They tend to be one-score games, and you got to make the play late if that's the case. You're going to be in a hostile environment. It's going to be a really close matchup likely, just like this matchup seems to always be. When that opportunity to make that big play in the fourth quarter arises, this team needs to rise to that occasion. Now, in terms of score predictions here, we can take a look what the trends predict, and the trends would predict a 26-23 Ravens win, which would still put this within the margin of error. The margin of error is around 3 points when you look at these trends predictions. The Ravens are just on the cusp of that, but certainly the trends would still give the Steelers a pretty decent chance to win this football game, even on the road. But unfortunately, just the things that the Steelers are going to need to do to win this game, I just don't have a high level of confidence they're going to be able to do that. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to stop Derrick Henry based on, last week's performance mixed with the last two performances against the Ravens offense. When it comes to the offense, I don't have a lot of confidence they're going to be able to stretch the field down the field. I'm not super confident Arthur Smith is going to play to the strengths of this Steelers personnel on offense either. I just don't really see the Steelers doing the things that they need to do to win. I do think just because it's this matchup, it's going to be close, and it's going to be one score at the end of the game. But I'm going to go with the Ravens to win this week, 24-17, and yet another heartbreaking loss for the black and gold. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Predict the score of Steelers versus Ravens down there in the comment section. Unfortunately, I got 24-17 Ratbirds, but let me know your prediction down there in the comment section. And then make sure you guys click that subscribe button, because we will be going live for this football game starting at 12 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday. This is what the thumbnail is going to be looking like, guys. We've got an hour-long pregame show followed by live play-by-play and analysis of the game itself, and then extensive post-game reaction. We have the largest watch parties for Steelers games anywhere here on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for all of your support this season. It's been absolutely phenomenal, and we're not done yet. In fact, we're just getting started. It's a brand new season here on Steelers Talk, tied at 6-6 at the top of the division with 5 games to go. It's a 5-game season, guys. We're going to be locked in for the rest of the season. If you're with us on that, click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.